So in a couple of days, Caren is going to be hitting the NA version of the game for our Valentine's event, and so you know I gotta do my video talking about how good she is and whether or not she is worth rolling for. I think right off the bat, one thing I kind of need to go ahead and just get out there about Caren is that a lot of people are going to try to use her as a looper, and I think you can do that somewhat effectively, but as we'll start getting into her kit and everything in this video, I've found that I like Caren a lot more when it comes to actual more difficult content. This is actually kind of a callback to the Nero video I did a couple of days ago where I was talking about that not every AoE servant needs to be a looper. Some of them could just be really good when it comes to more difficult content. I think Caren fits that niche a lot more. Again, while you can use her for looping, you'll probably find her a lot better when it comes to more difficult content because of how her kit is built and how she's a very, I would say, debuff heavy servant. She's got a lot of debuffs that she wants to hit the enemy with and a lot of tools that you really aren't going to use in farming, but are really good if you bring her to any like challenge quest or boss fight or something along those lines. Before we begin, if you have not already, make sure you leave a like on the video and you subscribe to the channel for that sweet daily FGO content, and you make sure that you peep all those links in the description down below, but namely, you're going to want to hit up that Twitch link that's down there because I stream every weekday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time unless, you know, I get sick or something. So pretty much every single day. However, this video is brought to you by LD Emulator. LD Emulator is the best way to be playing mobile games on your computer devices. I personally use it for all of my FGO accounts and I use it when I stream. And one of the newest and best features that I've personally found that I really enjoy, that I get a lot of comments about, is the ability to play FGO at higher levels of frame rate. If you don't know what that means, basically higher levels of frame rate just mean that like the gameplay is going to be more buttery smooth, and you can actually get it up to like 60 FPS or even 120 FPS, which is what I play on stream. And I get a lot of comments from people being like, dang, why is your game so buttery smooth? I'm like, hey, that's LD Emulator letting me play this game at 120 FPS. Also, it can let you set up macros, which if you're not sure what a macro is, it basically allows you to auto input things for your game to do for you by clicking the screen for you in certain locations. So if you set it up correctly, or you get a good macro, you can actually have it auto farm for you if you're getting really tired of farming the 500th box of the day, right, when we get something like Skahawk Fest coming out. But they're sponsoring this video. Make sure you go check them out in the description down below. They are the first link up there. But yeah, with all that being said, let's go ahead and just start diving into Caren's details as per usual, starting off with the girl's hits. And her hits are pretty decent, right? They're nothing super insane. You don't got like a Jack 6 hit quick card going on over here, but they are enough to get the job done. Very strong quick cards with 4 hits a pop, with a decent 9.9% star gen, a decent 0.57% NP gain stat. She's going to be able to provide a couple of stars because keep in mind she is a quick servant. And being able to get crits on those quick cards and those 2 3-hit arts cards are going to enable her to be in a kind of nice NP refunding loop. Again, especially if you're in more difficult content where you're kind of hanging in the same node and you can take advantage of those crits, she'll be looking kind of nice. Although, before we actually start getting into her main skills, I want to talk about her passive skills because Caren's passives are actually pretty interesting. I mean, she's got a whole bunch of them. She's got 5 of them, and you've got some nice things like debuff success rate. That's going to really help her, like defensive demerit, her quick down demerit. The 10% crit damage buff is kind of nice because, you know, you have all these crit stars and giving you some way to kind of give a little bit of a bite to those. That's all well and good. But it's like the 3rd and 5th one that are like, I think are particularly interesting because the 3rd one is making her easier to debuff, but the trade-off is that if she gets debuffed, she gets a 20% attack buff, which is really nice because post-buff where she'll get a chaotic special damage mod, it means with having a debuff on her, she'll have all 4 different buff types, and the damage she can start doing at that point is absolutely ludicrous. Like, she becomes an AoE servant that's capable of doing single target damage. But then the 5th one over here is even nice in conjunction with that because it makes her immune to terror and it makes her immune to charm. So while it's like, oh, well, like, what if I get charm debuffed or something? Well, then I can't really make use of the attack buff. And it's like, it's okay. Caren's only allowing herself to get like the good debuffs, quote unquote, I guess you could call them, the ones that aren't going to lock her down. I believe she could still be stunned, but locking out things like Terror that are going to like randomly stun you like at some point over the course of 3 turns, or Charm, which is just something that any boss that at least has Charm could just smack you with and just completely nullify you. Being immune to those is very nice because it at least means that the debuffs she's going to get are going to be something that you can play around. And then for whatever reason, she also has just a 10% resistance to Buster cards. I have no idea why she has that. I think it's just really funny. But yeah, just keep that in mind that if you're ever in, again, more difficult content where I think Caren shines a lot more, you can actually take advantage of this if the enemy ever hits you with like an attack down, an NP strength down, a defense down, just any kind of debuff they throw your way. You just got to start smiling because you're like, dude, I'm going to absolutely wreck this dude's whole career because now they're giving me even more damage, and the damage starts to ramp up significantly because, again, Caren gives herself a lot of different buff types. But we're actually not going to see that on the first skill. Getting into some of her actual main skills, the first skill, I guess you could say, is like her defensive skill and party defensive skill. It's going to start off by giving her 3 hits of invincibility, so that's already some really nice survivability because, I mean, invincibility outside of like what solemn defense is pretty much like the best defensive buff you can give yourself, and she's getting 3 hits of it, so that's already nice. But this is where the skill kind of gets a bit interesting because she's gonna give herself this buff where basically every turn for 3 turns, she's gonna suck 10% NP from both of your other party members and give that to herself. But in exchange, she's gonna give them a hit of invincibility back that lasts for 3 turns and 20% NP gain for 3 turns on a 6-turn cooldown. So it makes it kind of an interesting skill because it's like, all right, I'm going to keep myself safe, which is obviously something you need to do as a quick servant, right? Because Scotty doesn't really give you a whole lot of defensive options. She's really just got the NP going for her. And so she's like, okay, I'm not only going to take care of myself, but I'm also going to give the party basically the same hit of survivability that Scotty would give on her NP, but it's going to be a bit better because instead of it being 1 dodge, it's going to be 1 invincibility, but it's going to cost you a little bit. You got to pay a tribute. And that tribute is going to be your NP, which is why I'm kind of saying you can use her as a farmer if you absolutely want to, because between this skill and the 2 batteries that she has going for her, she's got a lot of ways to kind of just brute force her way through nodes. Even though her hits are kind of on the average side and her NP gain is on a bit of the average side, you could still kind of just get her to just raw brute force her way through nodes as long as she's like sucking up your other guy's NP and she's popping those batteries at good times. The only thing that I find a little suspicious is that they didn't give her the NP gain buff for herself, because even that 20% NP gain buff would have helped her out a lot because, again, her natural NP gain isn't super high. It's only at 0.57, and if they wanted to be really effective with her looping, they would have given it to her, but they specifically had that not apply to her at all, and she just kind of loops through raw NP, like just getting fat globs of NP throughout the entire turn. I don't know, I find it a little bit weird because it's like they clearly are trying to like shoehorn her into this like, no, we don't want you to use her as a looper. We want you guys to use her as like a boss killing DPS servant lady. But, you know, we're just going to make her loop anyway because, you know, that's just what we do over here in the FGO community. DW put out this servant and they were like, you know what? Here you go. Boss killing servant. And we're like, thanks, buddy. That's really cool. Looping servant. But anyway, that's just the first skill. And then we start moving over to the second skill. This, again, kind of screams to me that they wanted her to be used in a more difficult content type of scenario because she's going to give herself a taunt, which is really good because keep in mind she has those 3 hits of invincibility, so she can effectively buy you an entire turn if you time this correctly. She's then going to give herself a 30% battery, reduce all enemies' NP gauge by 1, and reduce their attack and defense by 20% each for 3 turns on a 7-turn cooldown. Again, I kind of already just mentioned like a minute ago that she has 2 separate batteries. That can be really good for farming because you're breaking it up in case you're missing out on a little bit of NP in between nodes. So again, yeah, you could still use her for that, but look at all this stuff that is like really good exclusively if you're doing more difficult content. The defense down can be really good if you save it for like wave 2 or wave 3, sure. But you're only going to get value off of it for that 1 node as opposed to, say, fighting 1 big boss or fighting a group of enemies where you can just continually smack them every single turn for 3 turns while their defense is lowered, and you're going to be a bit bulkier because their attacks aren't going to be hitting quite as hard because of that attack demerit. Again, I also think it's really funny that she's got like 2 other like methods of survivability in here. The taunt that can pretty much buy you a turn in conjunction with her triple invincibility, and the fact that not only does she give the party the invincibility, but she's also reducing enemy NP gauge to really say, Scotty, if you're going to be our support and you're not going to keep us safe, that's fine. If you just want to make us like big chungus, huge, quick crit damage DPS guys, by all means, keep living your best life. But somebody's got to keep us alive, and that's Caren. Caren's like, I'm going to give you guys invincibility. I'm going to make sure they can't NP us. I'm even going to reduce their attack. And so I think it's really funny that Caren's kind of like doing both things. She's kind of like the survivability and the DPS for the team. I just find it humorous. But then finally, we have her third skill. This you can kind of view as like her offensive skill in a way, because she's going to be giving herself an Omni card buff, right? 20% for each card type for 3 turns. That in and of itself is nice. I maybe would have liked to see the quick card get buffed to 30%, because again, that's going to help out the NP gain of her NP, of her quick cards. But again, I can only speculate that they didn't want to make her like too good at refunding or too good at looping, because they didn't want her to be in that role. That's definitely something we could talk about in the comments down below, what we think the design philosophy was for Caren. Again, I believe that she was supposed to be kind of more of a boss killing, like DPS survival servant. And again, I think this is another thing that points toward that, because normally you would get 30% for 3 turns, but they were like, what if we just gave her every card type of 20%? That way we have an excuse to kind of nerf it a little bit and not make it 30%. But yeah, she's also giving herself a 20% battery, and she has another way to reduce the enemy's NP gauge, except this one is targeted. Do not click the skill and think it's like the second one. Do not make the mistake of being like, oh yeah, like one of the enemies is here, let me just click this third thing and then go ahead and just remove one of their ticks. Make sure you actually target them when you use the skill, because you know, you might not think about it because it doesn't have the like reduction thing like you know it normally does. It's got the card buffs on there, so you don't think of it being like, oh boy, I'm about to get my offensive buffs in my battery. Oh man, I debuffed the wrong person, or not debuff, but you know, drain the wrong person. Make sure you're actually targeting him with this one. But again, still really insane, because she technically has a double drain. She can protect the party with not only invincibility, but also the ability to taunt people. And then if we transition over to her NP, she's also doing a lot of debuffs that are pretty much exclusively good if you're in those more difficult content areas, right? Because she's giving them quick reduction resistance of 20% for 3 turns. So every time you fire your NP, by the way, this is going to start stacking, and she's going to start doing insane amounts of damage to them. Because again, she's not only lowering their quick resistance, but she's also got a quick buff. She's got a defense down. And then she's also on overcharge over here, increasing her NP damage as well. So even just at like a baseline value, if you can't get her passive, and before she actually gets her NP upgrade where she gets the chaotic special damage mod, she can at least still double buff herself. If she gets a debuff, she's triple buffing herself with 3 different buff types. It just makes her really good. And then she has one of those insane abilities that I love when boss killing servants get. It's the debuff denial that she has, right? The buff block. If you've ever used Jolter against someone like Chi Shi Huang, I still talk about it to this day, because it's so insane how you could take a fight like that and just trivialize it by just denying the bosses any of their buffs. It is so dummy insane how it could just turn an absolute Chad of a boss into a coughing baby. And so that's why, again, you know, if you were looking forward to Caren and you were like, oh, I can't wait to use her as my farming servant, she's going to be my quick farming lady, it's like, yeah, you can use her for that, but please don't forget that I believe she was intended to be used as like a boss killing survival DPS challenge quest servant, right? I think that's what she's clearly tailored to do, and so don't forget that you have her if you're going to be using her for that. I mean, even her class as a ruler is really good for that, because it means she'll be taking like really little damage from a lot of these bosses, because who cares if they're like an assassin or a rider or a saber? Who cares? She takes resisted damage from all of them, right? She's going to be very tanky in a lot of these. Is she a must summon? Do you have to summon for her? No, I don't think she really reaches that status, but I think she is just really, really good. If you do summon for Caren, you can get some mileage out of her as a farmer if you want to use her for that, and you can get a lot of mileage out of her if you use her as, again, like boss quest, like challenging content type of person. My only concern is that with the whole like Lost Belt 6 countdown thing that we have over here on the NA version of the game, I'm really afraid that it's like, oh yeah, like normally we'd be like, oh yeah, you could still summon for Caren, and you know, Morgan will be out in like June or something, but now with her potentially dropping in like late March, April, somewhere around there, I'm a little bit more like hesitant to tell people. They're like, yeah, go ahead and summon, because even if you don't want Morgan, that potentially means that Oberon is going to be coming really early. That also means that we potentially get Melusine really early as well. Even Castoria could be seeing an early return, because she was supposed to come out with the release of Lost Belt 6. So again, very like hesitant to be like, yeah, go ahead and summon for Caren. Like, I'm not going to deny that she is good, but I'm very hesitant to tell people to go ahead and summon for her unless you're like a dolphin or a whale or something, in which case you are already going to summon anyway, right? Like, you've already properly summoned, bro. Like, let's be honest. But yeah, that's my thoughts and opinions on Caren. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Check out LD Emulator, top link in the description down below. And I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace, late guys.